I used to believe that motherhood was a kind of shield, that no matter how hard the world pressed down on me, the bond between a mother and her child would always protect me. But time and disappointment taught me otherwise. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I raised my child alone. Their father left when they were barely old enough to walk, and from that moment on, I carried everything. I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria, scrubbing trays and pouring coffee with a smile, then came home to a small rented house where I collapsed into bed after helping with homework. I gave up vacations, new clothes, nights out, even retirement savings, because my child's needs always came first. And for a long time, that sacrifice felt worth it. I remember their laugh as a little one, the way they used to run into my arms after school, cheeks flushed with stories about playground games and favorite teachers. Back then, love felt simple, unshakable. But somewhere along the way, things changed. As they grew older, gratitude soured into resentment. Instead of thanking me for what I gave, they counted what I couldn't. A car that wasn't new enough, clothes not expensive enough, friends whose parents offered luxuries I never could. Every year, the distance grew wider, not because I stopped loving, but because they stopped seeing me. By the time they reached adulthood, that gap had turned into a chasm. Our conversations were sharp, clipped, filled with sighs and eye rolls. When I reminded them of bills to be paid, or the importance of saving, they snapped, "You don't get it, Mom. You never had anything. Why should I listen to you?" Those words cut deeper than they could imagine. Because it was true. I never had much, but I had given everything to them. The worst moment came one evening at the dinner table. I had prepared roast chicken, their favorite from childhood, hoping to spark some small moment of connection. Instead, they pushed the plate away, sneering. "I'm not your little kid anymore. Stop pretending like we're some happy family. Honestly, I don't even know why you try." I sat there in silence, hands folded in my lap, the meal growing cold between us. That night, after they stormed upstairs, I washed the dishes alone and realized something that chilled me more than the soapy water. My own child despised me. Still, I couldn't let go of hope. That's the curse of mothers we keep loving, even when it hurts. I told myself maybe stress was making them cruel, that adulthood was confusing, that one day they'd remember who I was to them. But deep down, late at night when the house creaked and the loneliness pressed in, I began to feel a gnawing fear. Fear that my love wasn't just unreturned, it was unwanted. And in the weeks that followed, that fear would prove itself in ways I never could have imagined. Because resentment can grow into something darker. And sometimes, even blood is not enough to protect you. The tension in our house wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, quiet in a way that felt more dangerous than shouting. My child would sit at the kitchen table, scrolling through their phone while I spoke, offering only half smiles or sarcastic nods. The message was clear. Nothing I said mattered anymore. But money was the tinder that lit the flame. One evening, I spread the bills across the table. The mortgage, the electric, the hospital payment plan for the surgery I'd delayed too long. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice stayed steady. "I just need you to understand. We have to be careful. Every dollar counts. End. End. Quote. End of quote." They looked up, eyes narrowed. "We? You mean you. Don't drag me into your mess, Mom." I flinched. "Your mess?" I repeated, almost whispering. They leaned back in the chair, folding their arms. "You've worked your whole life and have nothing to show for it. No savings, no retirement, no plan. And you expect me to, what? Feel sorry for you? Or worse, carry you when you can't work anymore? My chest tightened. I never asked you for anything, I said softly. But they kept going, their words sharp as knives. Maybe it would be easier if you weren't around. Then at least I'd know where I stand with the house, with the accounts, instead of watching you scrape by, holding me back. The room spun, my vision narrowing. Easier if I weren't around? For a second, I thought I'd misheard. But the look in their eyes, cold, calculating, told me I hadn't. I wanted to scream, to demand how they could say such a thing. But the words died in my throat. I had carried this child inside me, labored to bring them into the world, sacrificed everything so they could live better than I had. And now, they sat across from me, as if wishing me gone was logical, practical. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The creak of the old house felt heavier than usual, as if even the walls had heard and judged me. I pressed a pillow over my face, stifling sobs that had no sound left. The next morning, they acted as if nothing had happened. They poured coffee, hummed to music on their phone, and then, almost casually, said, "Hey, what do you think about taking a trip? Just you and me." I blinked, confused. A trip? Yeah. Alaska. Wilderness camping. I read about this spot where hardly anyone goes. It's beautiful. We could reset, maybe. Their voice softened, almost persuasive. It was such a stark contrast to the night before that I didn't know how to answer. My mind twisted between disbelief and a tiny, aching hope. Maybe they regretted what they said. Maybe this was their way of making amends. I searched their face for sincerity, but it was unreadable, smooth as glass. Still, the word reset lodged in my chest like a promise. I wanted to believe. God help me. I wanted to believe. I forced a small smile. Alaska sounds beautiful. They grinned, satisfied, and went back to their phone. But deep down, unease stirred. The memory of their harsh words hadn't vanished. It lingered, whispering in the background. And yet, I silenced it. Because sometimes, mothers don't just forgive. We pretend. I told myself this was a chance. A chance to find the child I used to know, hidden under the layers of bitterness. I didn't realize it was the beginning of a trap. The plane touched down on a small airstrip surrounded by endless wilderness. Through the oval window, I saw nothing but a sea of green and white pine forests, stretching into the horizon. Mountains capped with snow even in summer. Rivers winding like silver veins. Alaska looked both breathtaking and terrifying, like the edge of the world. My child was buzzing with energy, almost too much. They handled the rental car paperwork quickly, loading up with gear, tents, packs, a cooler. Watching them, I felt out of place in my worn coat and sturdy shoes, a mother tagging along rather than an equal partner in adventure. The drive into the backcountry was long and quiet. For hours, the road snaked between towering trees, the occasional moose lumbering across. My child hummed to music, tapping the steering wheel, while I stared out the window. The beauty pressed in on me, but so did unease. There was no sign of towns, no houses, not even phone signal. If something happened out here, who would know? Eventually, we pulled into a ranger station, a small wooden cabin, with an American flag flapping in the wind. A tall man in a khaki uniform stepped outside as we parked. He looked rugged, his beard flecked with gray, eyes narrowed against the sun. "Heading out into the wild?" he asked, his tone friendly, but firm. My child nodded. "Yeah, remote camping. Just a couple of days. The ranger studied us carefully. Do you know what you're walking into? Weather turns quick this time of year. Bears are active. Wolves too. And once you leave the main trail, rescue isn't guaranteed. I shivered. We'll be careful, I murmured. He looked at me, his gaze lingering longer than necessary, as if he could sense my uncertainty. Ma'am, forgive me for saying this, but you don't look prepared. Do you have bear spray? Emergency beacon? Extra rations? Before I could answer, my child cut in smoothly. We've got what we need. Don't worry, I planned it all. The ranger hesitated, then sighed. All right. Just trust your instincts. And if anything feels wrong, turn back. The wilderness doesn't forgive mistakes. As we drove away, his words echoed in my head. If anything feels wrong, turn back. The road narrowed to gravel, then to dirt. Soon, we reached a clearing where the forest opened up to reveal a river sparkling under the late afternoon sun. My child parked, jumped out, and inhaled deeply. Perfect spot, right? I climbed out slowly, my legs stiff from the ride. The air was crisp, almost sweet, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. It was stunning, yes, but isolated. Too isolated. We unloaded gear, setting up the tent near the water. My child moved quickly, practiced, while I fumbled with stakes and ropes. They laughed once, shaking their head. You'd be lost without me. It was said like a joke, but the words stung more than they should have. As the sun dipped lower, the forest grew darker. Sounds sharper, the splash of a fish, the distant cry of a bird, the rustle of unseen animals. I wrapped my arms around myself, watching shadows crawl between the trees. For the first time, I admitted silently what I hadn't dared back home. Maybe this trip wasn't about reconnection at all. Maybe it was about something else. By the time the tent was pitched and the fire finally caught, the sun had melted into streaks of orange and purple behind the trees. The wilderness was quieter than I imagined. No hum of traffic, no distant voices, just the crackle of flames and the rhythmic rush of the river. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe this really was a chance for us. We sat across from each other by the fire, bowls of instant noodles in our laps. Steam rose into the cold air, fogging my glasses. My child slurped quickly, then leaned back, staring at the stars. You ever think about what happens when people die? They asked suddenly, voice flat, detached. I froze, spoon hovering. What do you mean? Like, when someone's gone, really gone, do you think they know? Do you think they regret anything? Or do they just disappear? The fire popped, sending sparks into the night. I set my bowl down carefully. That's a strange thing to ask out here. They shrugged, just curious. But their eyes didn't meet mine. Silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding louder than the river. Something about their tone chilled me casual, but too casual, as if they were testing the weight of my reaction. I tried to steer the conversation back. You know, when your father left, I thought about death all the time. Not mine, his. I imagined him gone, and how much easier life would have been. But death isn't an escape. Not for the people left behind. It's a burden. A hole that never closes. They poked at the fire with a stick, not answering. The flames danced across their face, highlighting a faint smirk, or maybe I imagined it. Later, when I slipped into the tent, exhaustion pulling me down, I expected sleep to come quickly, but I lay awake, listening to the sounds outside, the rustle of branches, the crackle of dying embers, and just faintly my child humming to themselves. It wasn't the cheerful hum from the drive. It was low, deliberate, unsettling. Sometime past midnight, I heard them unzip the tent and step out. I waited, straining to hear. After a few minutes, their voice drifted back, speaking into the darkness. Yeah, she won't see it coming. My blood turned to ice. I sat up, breath shallow, ears ringing. Who were they talking to? There was no one else out here. Unless the zipper whined again, and they slipped back inside, settling into their sleeping bag without a word. Their breathing evened out quickly, steady, as if nothing had happened. I lay rigid, staring at the tent ceiling, my hands clenched into fists. Maybe I had misheard. Maybe it was nothing. But the tone, the certainty echoed in my skull. She won't see it coming. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When dawn finally broke, pale light seeping into the tent, I already knew. Something was very wrong. This trip wasn't about healing. It wasn't even about us. It was about me. And whether I would survive it. The air was colder than before when I woke up, my breath rising in small white clouds. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The tent ceiling loomed above me, faintly lit by morning light. I reached out instinctively, toward the other sleeping bag empty. My heart jumped. I pushed myself up, unzipping the tent flap. The campsite stretched before me, silent, still. The fire pit was nothing but gray ash. The river continued its steady murmur. But something was wrong. The cooler was gone. The backpacks were gone. The rental car, parked just beyond the trees, was gone. And so was my child. I stumbled forward, calling their name, my voice breaking against the quiet forest. At first, I thought maybe they'd gone to fetch water, or to scout the trail. But the more I looked, the more the truth clawed at me. There was nothing left for me, not even scraps of food. On a rock near the fire pit, a folded piece of paper weighed down by a stone caught my eye. My hands shook as I picked it up. The words, scrawled in their familiar handwriting, blurred as I read. Don't bother trying to find me. You'll never make it back. This is easier, for both of us. The note slipped from my fingers. I swayed, gripping my knees as the forest tilted. My own child had abandoned me. No, not abandoned. Left me here to die. I sank onto the cold ground, staring at the trees until my eyes burned. Memories of raising them birthday cakes, scraped knees, bedtime stories flashed through me like cruel jokes. All of it led to this. A mother, discarded like yesterday's trash. I wanted to scream, to curse their name, but the sound wouldn't come. Only silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. When the first tears fell, I thought I might never stop, but then something shifted. The ranger's words came back to me. The wilderness doesn't forgive mistakes. If I sat here, sobbing, it would be over quickly. Cold, hunger, predators. Alaska would finish what my child had started. But if I stood up, if I fought back, maybe I still had a chance. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and forced myself to breathe. One step, one thought at a time. I searched the campsite for anything useful. They had taken nearly everything, but in their haste or arrogance, they left behind a half-burned stick, the tent itself, and my jacket. Not much, but something. I dug through the ground near the fire pit, finding a few charred pieces of wood still warm. If I could keep a flame alive, I could keep myself alive. I checked the river, cupping my hands to drink. The water was icy, shocking, but it steadied me. My reflection in the surface startled me. Eyes wide, hair disheveled, lips trembling. I looked like a ghost already. No, I told myself. Not yet. I turned back toward the forest, scanning the endless expanse of trees. Somewhere beyond them, there was a road. Somewhere, maybe miles away, people. Survival meant moving, but it also meant accepting the cruelest truth of all. The child I had loved more than life itself wanted me dead. As the morning sun broke through the canopy, casting fractured beams of light onto the ground, I took my first shaky step into the wilderness. I didn't know if I would make it, but I knew this. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of an easy death. Not yet. The forest swallowed me whole the moment I left the campsite. The trees rose like cathedral walls, their branches locking out the sun. The ground was uneven, roots snaking across my path, rocks slick with moss. Every step demanded focus, and every sound snap of a twig, rustle of leaves, sent a jolt of fear through me. Hunger came first. By the second day, the ache in my stomach became unbearable. I scavenged like an animal, plucking berries from bushes, praying I remembered which ones were safe. Blueberries, I thought. At least, they looked like the ones I'd seen at the supermarket back home. I chewed them slowly, half expecting poison to course through me. But nothing happened. Relief came in small bites. Thirst was easier. The river snaked alongside me at times, and I drank straight from it, the water sharp and metallic on my tongue. Each swallow cooled the fire of panic in my chest. But it also reminded me, water alone wouldn't sustain me for long. Nights were the hardest. The cold pressed down like an invisible weight, seeping into my bones even inside the tent. I had no sleeping bag, my child had taken it. I wrapped myself in my jacket, curling into a ball, shivering until exhaustion dragged me into restless sleep. Dreams came vivid and cruel. My child laughing, reaching for my hand, only to let go and watch me fall into endless darkness. On the third night, I woke to the sound of movement outside the tent. Heavy, deliberate, my breath caught. I peered through a small gap and froze a bear, its massive silhouette shifting against the moonlight. It sniffed the ground near the fire pit, grunting low. I pressed both hands over my mouth, my body rigid with terror. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the bear lumbered off, leaving me trembling in silence. I didn't sleep again that night. Day by day, my body weakened. My legs ached from climbing ridges. My feet blistered from damp shoes. I fell once on a slope, sliding down until a tree stopped me. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I forced myself up, biting back a scream. I couldn't afford injury. Injury meant death. Yet somewhere within the misery, a strange fire lit inside me. I remembered the ranger's warning, trust your instincts. I began to notice patterns. The way moss grew thickest on the north side of trees. How birds always grew louder near water. I started stacking small piles of rocks behind me, breadcrumbs to mark my path. I was becoming someone else. Not just a mother, but a survivor. Still, loneliness gnawed at me. Each night, I whispered to myself, telling stories I once told my child at bedtime. Fairy tales, nursery rhymes, even prayers. My voice cracked, but it kept me human. On the fifth morning, something shifted. As I followed the river downstream, I spotted a faint trail, barely more than a worn line in the dirt. Footprints. Not animals' boots. My heart hammered. Someone had been here. Maybe still was. Hope surged so strong it nearly knocked me over. I clutched the nearest tree, forcing myself to breathe. But then another thought slithered in. What if it wasn't help, waiting at the end of this trail? What if it was them, my child, coming back to finish what they started? The forest offered no answers, only silence. And so I kept moving, one shaky step at a time, torn between fear and the desperate will to live. The boot prints grew clearer the farther I followed the faint trail. Each step made my pulse throb harder in my ears. I was torn between sprinting forward and freezing in place. If it was help, salvation waited just ahead. If it was my child, then the nightmare wasn't over. By late afternoon, the trees thinned slightly, and smoke rose in the distance, a thin gray ribbon against the sky. My legs nearly gave out. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant people. I stumbled toward it, clutching branches for balance, until a small camp came into view. A man crouched by the fire, tending to a kettle. He wore weathered clothes, his beard thick and white. A rifle leaned casually against a log beside him. When he saw me, he stood quickly, eyes wide. "Ma'am, you lost?" His voice carried both caution and concern. I nearly collapsed with relief. "Please, I..." My throat cracked, words spilling out broken. "I've been out here. Days. My child... they left me." His brow furrowed deeply. He guided me to a log, offering water from a battered canteen. I drank greedily, tears sliding down my face. "You're lucky I was here," he said quietly once I'd calmed. "Not many wander this far. What happened?" Haltingly, I told him everything. The invitation to Alaska, the ranger's warning, the night whispers, the note. His jaw tightened as he listened, his eyes narrowing. When I finished, he leaned closer. "You need to know something. There's been talk in the nearby town. A young man your description matches came through last week, buying supplies. Rope, knives, extra fuel. Folks said he bragged about a trip with his mother, but the way he spoke..." The man shook his head. It unsettled people. My blood ran cold. "Bragged? Like it was some kind of game," he said grimly. I gripped the canteen so hard my knuckles whitened. The confirmation struck harder than the wilderness ever could. This wasn't a moment of anger or words said in cruelty. My child had planned this. Carefully, the man studied me for a long moment. "You can't stay here. Not if he's still around. If he realizes you survived, he might try again." My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to collapse, to let someone else take over. But another part, the part that had survived nights of cold and hunger, rose stubbornly. "I can't just hide. He's my child. My own flesh and blood. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal," the man said firmly. "Survival means facing the truth, no matter how bitter." We sat in silence as the fire crackled. My hands trembled in my lap, torn between grief and fury. All my life, I'd believed a mother's love could weather anything. But what happens when that love is turned into a weapon against you? As night fell, the man insisted I stay by his fire. He handed me a blanket. Rough, but warm. "We'll head toward town at first light," he said. But sleep didn't come easy. The stars above mocked me with their cold clarity, while the forest whispered secrets I didn't want to hear. And in the back of my mind, a question gnawed at me, sharp and unrelenting. If I faced my child again, would I have the strength to forgive or the strength to fight? At dawn, the old man doused the fire, packed his kettle, and slung the rifle over his shoulder. "Town's 2 days' walk if we pace it right," he told me. "Stick close." I nodded, legs still aching but steadier than before. Each step felt like defiance, proof I was still here, breathing, despite everything. The forest seemed less suffocating now, though shadows still curled between the trees. By midday, we reached a clearing. My chest tightened instantly. Parked near the tree line was the rental car, the same one my child had driven into the wilderness. The old man raised a hand, signaling me to stop. "Stay back," he whispered. His eyes scanned the area, every muscle tense. But before either of us could move, a familiar voice rang out. "Mom?" I turned slowly. My child stepped from behind the car, hands raised, a strained smile on their face. "You're alive!" I. They glanced at the old man, then back at me. "I didn't think you'd make it." Bleh. The words twisted like a knife. Not "I was worried," not "I'm sorry," just surprise. The old man kept the rifle low but ready. "This? Your boy?" I nodded stiffly. My child's gaze flicked to the weapon, then narrowed. "You don't need him," they said, their tone shifting, sharper now. "It's between us." My knees trembled, but I forced my voice steady. "Why?" For a moment, their face cracked anger, guilt, something darker all flashing at once. Then came the confession. "Because you held me back my whole life. Because every decision, every choice, you made it about you. I wanted freedom. And you were in the way. This trip was supposed to end it." The forest fell silent, the words hanging heavy in the air. I felt something inside me fracture, but at the same time, harden. "You think killing me makes you free?" I whispered. "It makes you smaller than I ever feared. I gave you everything, my body, my years, my love. And you chose betrayal." They took a step closer, desperation in their eyes. "It doesn't have to end this way. Walk back into those woods, Mom. Disappear. No one will ask." The old man shifted his grip on the rifle. "Don't move," he warned. But I raised a hand. "Number, this is my choice." My heart pounded as I looked into the face I once cradled, kissed goodnight, comforted through tears. Now it was the face of someone who had marked me for death. For the first time, I saw them clearly, not as my child, but as a stranger. My voice shook, but the words came sharp. "I won't walk away. If you want me gone, you'll have to look me in the eyes and finish it yourself." The clearing held its breath. My child froze, torn between rage and hesitation. Seconds stretched. Finally, with a growl of frustration, they turned, kicked at the dirt, and stormed back toward the car. The engine roared, and in moments, they were gone, swallowed by the trees. I stood rooted, the weight of everything crashing down. Relief, grief, an ache so deep it hollowed me. The old man rested a hand on my shoulder. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you home." As we walked away, I didn't look back. The forest had taken enough from me. My child's betrayal would scar me forever, but it would not end me. For the first time since the trip began, I believed I might live, not because of them, but in spite of them.